I, I took that background picture at UC Irvine or Riverside. So
Of course, everything great comes out of Orange County.
Hey, it's a bespoke background picture.
Mm-hmm.
I took myself. I did it myself.
I'm proud.
I mean, it's kind of weird for us to be working on Christmas. I was thinking, but then I started realizing like Santa has to work today, so it's really, we should too. And then I started thinking, maybe Santa would be for like worker protections and, unions and stuff. But then I realized no, because
he only hires
Santa's
elves.
all about the monopoly.
He only hires elves. He only hires elves.
Yeah, he's not for a level playing field at all.
He has a height requirement.
Well, in that case, I mean, I'm definitely not getting hired. And then I went and checked our kids' stockings because, the behavior's been a little questionable this year. But because we're a green family and we want to save the earth, instead of giving them a lump of coal in their stocking, we gave them a little solar panel.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Even though coal is clean.
It is if you wash it enough times.
Okay.
In a bleach bath, yes, you can clean it, but I don't recommend it. It changes the taste of your meat after you barbecued. So, anyway, let me. Which of my two do you want me to kick off with?
It's up to you, bro. Whatever one you want to do, it's your choice.
Great. Well, I'm going to start with Scotts Miracle-Gro. I got lots of commentary. We can go back and forth on this, and I just finish it up with my spicy perspective. But I'm going to start with Scotts Miracle-Gro. Scotts Miracle-Gro, struggling Hawthorne seeks marijuana M&A deal. Scotts Miracle-Gro, audacious $1.7 billion foray into the marijuana business over the past decade, is a sensitive topic for the father-son team whose family helped build the lawn and garden giant. Scotts CEO Jim Hagedorn told MJ Biz Daily that hundreds of layoffs and debt saddling the Ohio company's cannabis subsidiary, Hawthorne Gardening Company, almost took Scotts down. Now, Jim Hagedorn and son Chris, who is Hawthorne's general manager, are mapping out a change in strategy for the cannabis cultivation supplies company. The two hopes to transform Hawthorne into a standalone marijuana juggernaut, and they're ready to do some deal making with potential partners, including other cannabis companies. That's a big change. Chris could have sold Hawthorne to an interested buyer who approached the company's chief operating officer at MJ BizCon in 2022 in Las Vegas. Quote, and my response was, just tell them to go fuck themselves. We're not for sale, quote, Chris told MJ Biz Daily at this year's conference in November. It wasn't the right decision. It wasn't a whoops. It's how we felt at the time, cut in Jim, whose father, Horace Hagedorn, launched the original Miracle-Gro in 1951, according to the company website. These days, Jim often finishes his own son's sentences, especially when he says shit like that. Remarks that, more often than not, are peppered with swear words. All the cursing is perhaps understandable. Over the past 18 months, Hawthorne has laid off roughly 1,000 employees. Hawthorne's sales tanked by 40% in the quarter ending July 1st, enough to drive overall sales down by 6% at Scotts. The company spent, listen to this, the company sent almost $200 million worth of unsold grow lights to the landfill because no one was buying them, and Hawthorne didn't have anywhere to store the inventory. We're gonna dive into that in a second. That's after borrowing around $1.7 billion over the past decade to build Hawthorne, with headline-grabbing acquisitions of companies such as California-based General Hydroponics, which is in Sebastopol, California. Thank you very much. Shout out to Larry. Money woes. This correction almost took Scott down, Jim said. The entire company has suffered. We almost ran out of effing money trying to do this. So at this year's MJ BizCon, the Hagedorns and their executive team had a very different attitude towards interested parties, welcoming conversations with potential partners and hoping to relieve Scotts of the burden of the cannabis industry, which is still waiting catalysts such as federal marijuana reform. But the Hagedorns aren't looking for an exit. Instead, Jim and Chris plan to saddle Scott with the debt, and find other struggling cannabis companies with what they say are unfairly low valuations to form a large company that could compete with big tobacco, alcohol, pharmaceutical companies that choose to enter the marijuana industry, assuming the plant is legalized under federal law. We're being fucking shunned by normal investors, right? That's the entire side of the world, Chris said. If we'll be left in the dark to our own devices, we'll build something really powerful because the storm will pass. Regulatory reform will eventually happen. The devil's in the details, but it's not the first time the Hagedorns have banked on legalization. The Hagedorns conceded that they, like many other companies, might have been too aggressive, spending too much under the assumption that federal reform would occur. Thus, they've been protected. Thus far, they protected the company's New York Stock Exchange listing, SMG, by maintaining its ancillary non-plant touching status. Its 2021 investment of $150 million in Toronto-based RIV Capital, which is plant-touching entity with a business license in New York, was through a convertible note that would give Scotts a 42% stake in the company. Jim and Chris said they would similarly be interested in taking a non-controlling portion of a new entity, which could be formed with larger multi-state operators or a group of smaller companies. They're interested in talking with public and private companies, and they believe they have a lot to offer. While MSOs have been too focused on growth, opening retail outlets, and growing facilities, Hawthorne is concentrating on the science of cultivation practices, something they believe is invaluable to cannabis producers. When you look at what Hawthorne is, what we bring to the table, it's an integrated play going from genetics to cultivation to generate the best potential quality at the lowest potential cost. Matthew Garth, Scott's chief operating officer, told MJ Biz Daily. I'm going to cut to the chase on this because there's a bit more I could read, but I'd rather focus on the commentary here for a second. So first of all, I remember when Scott's purchased General Hydroponics, and it was definitely a validator for me that the industry was maturing, normalizing, that the scale was global, that the opportunity was larger. And when they bought General Hydroponics, that company was here in Sebastopol, where I live. And so it reminded me of the oversized influence, yet again, of Northern California. They've also made some other interesting acquisitions, and I'm not mad at the guys. But I do have to say one thing. If you throw out $200 million worth of lights, you got way too much money. Like, if there's a leftover half-eaten container of Chinese food that's 2 days old in my refrigerator, I'm not throwing it out. I'm gonna suck that down. Why would you throw out $200 million worth of lights? Because you couldn't find a place to store it. Have you guys ever heard of cargo containers? And if you're going to throw out $200 million in lights, why don't you do something noble with them? Why don't you give them to an R&D facility? Why don't you send them free of charge to any cultivating company in the United States and just say, here you go, we got you. This one's free. I mean, that's an old cannabis technique. Give the first one free. The fact that they threw out $200 million worth of lights is the worst thing I could ever see in this article, but for one other thing. When this guy said to go fuck off, no company should ever be based on the emotions of a family. Not when you're at that scale. There's supposed to be corporate governance. And so when somebody says, hey, I'm interested in selling, you say, talk to my assistant, send me a proposal. I'm busy right now. Open to what you have to hear. The notion that this younger third generation gentleman would just be full of such hubris is painful to me. I would like to be so rich that I don't give a fuck, right? But even if you are rich, if you're playing with other people's money or you have a publicly traded company, you're paid to give a fuck. And so it's curious to me. It talks about how the father's always completing the son's sentences, and that's because the son is deep-throating his own foot every time he opens his mouth. One of the things that he said is, it wasn't a whoops, it's how we felt at the time. When do you run a $1.7 billion empire on feelings? Anyway, this is Yarrow Kubrin, High at 9 News, Christmas Day. I'd like to know what you guys have to think.
Maybe Yarrow Hawthorne is trying to boost its ESG score by governing by feelings. You know?
Look, I'm not mad at these guys. The article goes on to talk about some of the other stuff that they have interests in, that they're not giving up, that they're from Ohio, and that that's a Trump state, and that Ohio just passed recreational. I don't think these guys were wrong in seeing the horizon, but I think, like many of the Canadian companies, this foregone conclusion of federal legalization being right on the horizon has been a massive strategic misstep that we see repeated time and time again. And they're going to need the staying power to realize that inevitability. And it's a bloodbath. That said, if you throw out $200 million in lights, that's really not a great use of inventory. Give it to social equity cultivators. Give it to Cornell University at their agricultural facility. Give it to UC Davis. But don't just piss away $200 million. Like that, to me, just reeks of privilege, a lack of frugalness, and frankly, bad judgment.
I mean, I wonder what their shareholders have to say about this, like what they're going to say at their quarterly meeting about throwing away $200 million worth of lights. And I imagine that's at the wholesale level too, Yarrow, right? That's not even at the retail level.
I mean, that just hurts me even more. That is like financial abuse. Like there's war crimes, landmines.
You know what they should? You know what they should have done with these? You know what they should have done with these? They should have offered it as part of the settlement agreement with Jungle Boys. They should have just gave them the lights.
Anything's better than the trash.
Man, I wonder if that's what they thought of these lights. If there was a malfunction with them or something, so they're like, let's trash them. They don't work as good. It was
the oncoming wave of LEDs, Jay.
Is that what it is? Oh, I could see that too.
They really so Hawthorne, and not knowing the cannabis industry and what was going on, really got caught, and kind of thankfully to the benefit of a lot of ancillary friends and acquaintances like General Hydroponics. What happened was they started going in hard in the California 215 market and not realizing what scaling up, what legalization in other states, as well as scaling up from legalization in California, was about to do to that market. And right after Hawthorne bought Botanicare and General Hydroponics and Rootmaker and on and on and on, within a year of that is when all of this sea change happened. There was a glut of cannabis. The majority of home cultivators went out of business, and then all of a sudden, most of the hydro shops also closed, and so Hawthorne was left in this bag of citizen cultivators not being able to afford to do so. And so all of a sudden, all these products for a moment seem almost worthless. And they've pivoted hard into legal states and larger agricultural sized grows and that type of thing. And they're rebounding, and they have a decent LED light. And so they're kind of on the comeback trail. But a lot of people were panicking. So also right when this happened, they threw this away. California Energy Commission was writing their next 5-year plan for energy in California. And a lot of people read what they were aiming to do and kind of jumped the gun in thinking that they weren't going to be able to use any HID lights. And what they ended up coming up with is, first off, it didn't start till 2023. If more than 10% of anything you're running, if more than 10% of it is a new build, then you have to use LED lights. You can retrofit with the HIDs in older facilities, and if you scale small enough, you can continue to use HID. But a lot of people just panicked and dumped their HIDs and went to LEDs. Yeah, so that's probably what they were doing. But to Yarrow's point, you could have given them to a million different school facilities or other agricultural facilities that use these lights in greenhouses, and you could have probably created a big tax benefit for yourself instead of just throwing away a bunch of these precious minerals into the landfills.
Yeah, no.
Plus the goodwill, plus the publicity. I would write it off as an advertising expense. Companies that do the right thing tend to have better results, and companies that have a North Star that's not just about dollars and cents tend to resonate more with the public.
Could you imagine, Yarrow, if you were at MJ Biz and you walked near the Hawthorne booth and they just had said free lights, go take as many as you want, right? That would have been such a big publicity stunt for them. They would have been like, Hawthorne's giving away free lights. If you come to MJ Biz, you get free lights. Take as many as you can carry.
And that would have, I went to their booth this year, and again, I don't have anything against these guys. I'd love to drink a beer with them.
I know Jim. We could arrange that. I know Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I know Larry with General Hydroponic, and he said nothing but nice things about these two gentlemen. But imagine the PR of like, yeah, we brought all these lights, we blew it all out, we couldn't help ourselves, everybody wanted our lights. Yeah, everybody wanted them because they're free, but everybody wanted our lights. Even the noobs to the industry would come home with a couple, well-wrapped light bulbs on their carry-on. Like, hey, careful, that's my swag.
Fragile.
Yeah, right. Hey, what'd you get from the conference? A couple baseball caps?
Yeah.
I got some lights. So, to me, and again, we're here with opinions without maybe the full backstory, but that just seems like an egregious waste.
Yes, I'm with you on that.